Students enjoy a popular VR history simulation game. Even though they are only playing games, the feeling that the world is being invaded by magical beasts and that over 200,000 people have died is real. The thought of monsters bursting out like a cataclysm 630 years ago, when Deus Ex Machina was out of control, was terrible, and to prevent it from happening again, all harmful magic instruments and high-level magic practices were outlawed. Since using offensive magic was prohibited in this world, highly trained assisted living magic was used along with scientific advancements to create a very comfortable environment. The male protagonist's name was Minato, and he was a regular person who died in a senseless manner after being struck by a magic freight wagon that was 27 meters long, 30 tons in weight, and driving at a speed of 300 kilometers per hour when he was out for a stroll. Fortunately, he was revived in a world that was entirely different from his previous life. He was at first very lost and puzzled because he had no idea where he was, but after discovering an old magic computer, he started to take an interest in this world. But when he realized that there were also magical creatures present, he became anxious because, in the modern era, all magical beasts had vanished. After fiddling with the computer, he witnessed firsthand the attack magic with many hazardous pieces of information, which regular people never dreamed of finding out in their entire lives. He fell backward abruptly as the computer discharged, and he could hear a helpless scream sounding in the distance. It was a boy who was being attacked by a demon whose power was distinct from that of a VR demon because it actually emitted real harm. Because he believed he wouldn't be able to do anything if he went up to help, he was reluctant to do so. However, he knew that if he stayed put, the other child would certainly perish, so he made the decision to run up and utilize the magic machine to drive the demonic beast away. Minato was overjoyed, and the other child thanked him. At the same time, the youngster was curious about the machine in his hand. Minato was amazed since the machine had led him to this planet. Young Jitli, a young merchant, didn't think much of it and brought Minato to the nearby city as an act of appreciation. The wheel of destiny had already started to turn as many young adventurers congregated in the city of Mania, where business was also busy. They had arrived in the town of Mania, which was located half a day's ride from the closest city, an unusual distance if traveling alone, and the road to the city was quite bad. This place was so different from Minato's developed society. Here, he and Jitli hugged. Jitli thanked him once more, and they bid him farewell. The Adventurers Guild was where the corpses of slain magical creatures were collected. Minato entered a house where adventures gathered. There were many beginner sisters there like him, but everyone appeared to be stronger than he was. He remembered Jitli telling him that first, the adventurer needed to go to the guild to register, and the main job was to receive a letter of commission to explore and destroy demonic beasts. Second, newcomers like him should choose small and newly formed guilds, so Mana was probably a good starting point. He looked around and felt a new surprise. Even though he still had some money from Jitli, he needed to have his own income, so he began to walk to the register. He wasn't worried about missing weapons or not knowing how to use them, so he chose the fighting skills of a mage. When the receptionist saw this, she was startled because he was a magician without a wand. Since he was a light system magician, the clerk gave him the machine to check his attributes. Surprisingly, he was a sage with all 6 magical attributes: earth, water, wind, fire, light, and darkness. He was afraid that having 6 attributes would imply a loss of freedom, so he claimed to lack the wind attribute. After registering, he participated in his first school practice match. He didn't care about attributes at the time, but there were regulations regarding wands. What interested him now was the attack magic of this realm, something he had always desired. It was time to put Minato's journey toward becoming a sage to the test with a genuine bout. As soon as he entered the arena, he noticed the teacher yelling angrily at the new recruits because, despite 3 individuals joining forces, they were powerless to stop the teacher while the magical monsters were much faster and more powerful than him. This was a trial run for inexperienced adventurers that also appeared challenging. Here, everyone refined their skills and discovered the types of tasks that worked for them. Therefore, novices always came here first. Because the teacher perceived Minato as having 5 traits, Minato raised his hand defensively and requested the teacher's passionate guidance. However, the master chuckled because Minato was a mage who could only employ 1 magic attack. Minato had an odd sense about the inhabitants of this world, thinking they had something strange when they heard the word magician. Then the master pointed to 5 stels and commanded Minato to aim and attack. Prior to deciding on a target, completing the 1st through 5th, Minato concentrated on launching steadily. Only then did he consider speed. The teacher gasped in shock at what he saw because no ordinary magic could burn the stels because they were all protected by high-end protective magic. However, at this moment, Minato was employing a type of magic that the teacher had never witnessed. A magic master magicus quietly strolled over, staring at Minato for a minute. He could only make a minor spell, absolutely unable to fight because the mage was only the one behind the swordsman and the archer was a supporter. Minato now understood everyone's reaction when they first heard about the mage. He was annoyed that he had only learned one spell and that no other mage was attacking. Yet, with someone of his dreadful power, it was conceivable to take credit for the limelight from even the higher parties. He had finished signing up as an adventurer, but he was still perplexed as to why regular attack mages were so weak. They weren't weak at all. High-level attack mages could withstand thunder attacks, but their magic strength would run out after just 3 consecutive shots. As soon as Minato saw this, he was very proud of his magic's ability to withstand 500 shots. He picked up the old computer and thanked it. However, since he had only performed one move, he was likely to hit magical animals that weren't affected by electricity going forward. As a result, he still desired to learn more about offensive magic. They advised him to go to the forest west of the city, where magical monsters did not show frequently. Upon hearing this, he said goodbye to everyone and left. Despite his excitement, he did not want to read the book that the magician had given him. It had to have more than 1,000 pages. As soon as he finally opened the book, he was surprised at how difficult it was to read and had a good understanding of why magicians were so weak. However, as he paid closer attention, he noticed that there were many structures in the book that prevented the flow of magic power. In order to fix this and maintain the fundamental structure, he vividly recalled the magic ring of the learned electric blow, which was both straightforward and coherent. After 10 minutes of research, he removed all the extra pieces, and it was evident that the magic power had been improved. These improvements were undoubtedly highly beneficial for adventurers. Okay, his personal collection of improved magic was complete, but he was unaware that a female was peeking at him and that she was genuinely taken aback by his magic. He was certain he had been reincarnated after he looked outdoors after waking up, and he had remained up late last night because he was so focused on enhancing the magic in this book. The moment Minato claimed to have upgraded his magic, the chef was surprised because there were countless numbers of people in this world who had complete faith in their magic. Minato ate quickly so he could get to the guild early, but it was already too late. As soon as he arrived, he noticed people shoving for a spot to look at the assignment board, so the receptionist hastily pushed him in. He noticed the mission in the crowd. All he had to do was utilize the offensive magic to receive up to 30,000 jigs, an amount equal to what regular people needed to work to earn for a full month. He just needed to experiment with magic, which was too suitable for him, instead of taking down magical monsters. He tried to grab the mission but realized that reality was not like a dream because the mission sheet had been stolen. His first lesson came when he was kicked into a sea of people. After some time, he was given a task sheet that asked him to find magic stones in ancient ruins. This was a mission that even those with the F rank could complete. However, many people were unable to finish this mission because it was the same relic that many people were exploiting, making it difficult to find the magical stone, and the way was also complicated. Minato needed to raise his rank as fast as possible because the higher the rank, the more quests and awards there were. The first condition to advance in rank was to consistently accomplish the assignment while demonstrating reliability and effective strategies. The second thing needed was to succeed on the teacher's periodic exams. He set off on his errand, but it was a long way from where he was, and he was also pretty hungry. So, he grabbed the meal that had been prepared in advance and ate it deliciously. Suddenly, a female arrived from behind him, offering to eat. It was the girl who had peeked at him the other day. She was extremely gluttonous. After sitting down to eat and talk for a bit, he learned that her name was Aimi. As soon as she finished eating, she hurriedly fled, leaving Minato to finish the task while exploring the ruins. It was a safe mission, but Minato still had to be on the lookout for magical creatures. When he spotted a hidden door, he immediately activated his magic ability to open it. Just as the door opened, a knife-like magical beast charged in to attack the intruding party, but the other girl's cheers encouraged him to continue into the dark labyrinth. The atmosphere was so gloomy here that he employed light magic to illuminate the path, wondering whether this region had never been explored. The receptionist said it was a relatively secure task, but he had to be cautious because he had just been attacked. Then he came across a lovely gate that appeared to be barred. Behind this door was undoubtedly a spot no one had yet discovered. He decided it was time to test out his increased magic. He was able to open the entrance, yet after hundreds of magical creatures with knives charged over, he had to swiftly use artillery fire, launchers, and cartridges. But they suddenly stopped working, forcing him to restore his composure and see the immovables that seemed to be created by magic. As far as he knew, out-of-control magic devices were frequently cleaned up with lightning system magic. Therefore, he utilized a newly enhanced thunder spear that could shoot constantly for 50 seconds. He prayed for success, and when he was eventually able to pull it down, he sighed in exhaustion. However, having worked so hard so far, something worthy surely awaited him to keep him going. All his efforts had paid off. He had obtained 240 green magic gems, more than anybody else had ever taken. Each gem was worth 30,000 jigs. Only by successfully finishing this quest was he nearly qualified to apply for the rank-up exam. This was his chance to develop, and he only needed one more mission to demonstrate his fighting prowess. He realized that he wanted to sell the monster he had slain to save Jitli. Everyone was amazed by the monster's horror, thus Minato accomplished a punishment mission. Although he didn't wish to advance in rank right away, the magic master had already certified his strength. He passed, and since he was the quickest person in guild history, he was the one exception who didn't need to take an exam. Congratulations to Minato on being promoted to rank E. Everyone expected him to select one of the thrilling, dangerous, magical beast hunting tasks, but instead, he selected the simple mission to collect the musicore tree. He was given a pursuer of knowledge duty at the unique training facility by a group of adventurers with a focus on historic ruins, including a swordsman and a wizard well known for discovering relics. If he learned about the relics and magic devices, he wouldn't lose anything, and he also didn't need to pass the exam. Therefore, he resolved to find out who they were, not expecting it to be the girl he saw at the ruins the other day, Aimi. The goal of the mission was to assemble adventurers skilled in using magic for combat, and those who sought knowledge would take part in a test to see whether the contestants' magic possessed the necessary power. The small girl standing next to Aimi was scared when she saw Minato and believed he was a monster since she didn't know what this level of magic power was. It came out that she was the one with the magic power technique who could see that the magic power was Meina. Meina saw Minato had all 6 traits, while Aimi innocently wondered if Minato's magical might would help her on her quest. She merely seemed interested in the future assignment, now that she understood his magic power was equivalent to that of the Arc Dragon. Prior to anything else, Minato had to win over Meina and Aimi's trust. The moment Meina instructed him to use magic to burn the target over there, he found it to be too simple and burned it in an instant. Meina was captivated by Minato's odd and beautiful magic, and Aimi appreciated her desire to learn it. Of all, Minato had just achieved the magic, which was so lovely and rewarding, so Meina no longer felt fearful or furious with him. She perused the magic book and was stunned to find that the prior magic did not exist in the work, which he had written himself. She pondered this because only the tremendous magic of Magiarch could enable him to create his own magic. Aimi was ecstatic and wanted to talk about the task right now. They had an undiscovered artifact to find, but there were terrible monsters in their way, so they needed more assault mages like Minato. He hesitated to join in because this job was not as simple as indiscriminately using offensive magic. Meina put the promised 30,000 jigs on the table, and Minato would get half of the riches for successfully investigating the ruins. Initially, Aimi planned to recruit 10 people to ensure quality, but those who used offensive magic well didn't show up to register. Therefore, the rumor that just a handful of people in this universe employed offensive magic was accurate. Yet, because of his magic power, he had the ability to outperform 10 other people in the plan in terms of strength. All that was needed was to give him the order to shoot magic. Minato was still concerned about the mission's danger. This was the main issue. But no mission was safe, and if he felt the situation got worse, he could flee. He found this adventurous career to be liberating, so he accepted. It was a delight to work with folks who sought knowledge, but he, too, had to move forward as an adventurer. He couldn't sleep the night before his departure since he was too eager. He got up early, and as he refined the magic in the book and progressively learned the inner structure of magic, he also sought to come up with his own techniques. What a powerful blow! This encyclopedia was largely made up of simple magic rings that required little force but produced useful movements that could be used repeatedly. As a result, he developed magic that was highly potent but required a lot of energy. Done. He used 80% of his magic power to make it, and it was much more intricate than the hardest one in the book. He also made a terrible explosion. He sealed it temporarily. The all-night studies were indeed terrifying. "Let's go hunt down the strong enemy," they said. but they continued running away, so Minato complained about the two girls. A weird sound was heard, and it was the voice of the magical beast Mizia Bat. Aimi and Meina were able to slay it in a second, while Minato was horrified, remarking that if this was a hunting assignment, the bounty must be at least 3,000. Aimi, who was extremely bloodthirsty, wanted to hunt so much. The unknown relic was found by Aimi and Meina on the stairs, where the main stage began. Because these two girls had limited agility, Minato had to use magic to strengthen his entire body in order to catch up with them. Their movement was noticeably different from that of the soldiers in Meina. Famous adventurers were definitely distinct. These were most likely the partners he needed. It was challenging to locate this location since the entrance was hidden by thick grass. Finding it required both a keen eye for detail and a thorough understanding of archaeology. However, while wandering around, Aimi discovered this magnificent relic, which Minato observed for the first time, indicating that Aimi must be a unique individual. Aimi was like a dog sniffing when she suddenly caught a whiff of something very alluring that turned out to be a jewel. If it had been Minato, he would not have been able to spot it. When Minato heard it, he thought back to the first time he met Aimi and how she had also given him a sniff, wondering whether she had been trying to identify his abilities at the time. Aimi revealed that the relic she previously told him about was due to her sniffing because it smelled rather attractive. She also noted that something even more intriguing was concealed beyond the door. Even though Minato couldn't smell anything, he knew that the object was just a few steps behind the door, so he knew that his mission was to employ offensive magic. A large creature wearing lava armor called a great golem stormed in. Aimi enticed the foe to draw attention to herself. This tactic worked for those who lacked critical thinking abilities, but the golem could regenerate quickly even after being cut in half with a sword, demanding the use of magic to defeat it. Meina utilized her magic power to detect the monster's core, and she spotted it. However, Meina's assault magic was weak, most likely to make Minato merely aim there. Minato was the kind of person who, if given a duty, would take it extremely seriously. This time, his responsibility was to take the place of the 10 offensive mages who were to be brought into the organization. Having acknowledged this, he had to be committed to destroying its core at all costs. Although Minato had damaged the core, Golem had the power to continuously recover, therefore, it had to be destroyed totally. This battle, according to comrades, lasted a long time. Golem was no longer there, it had already disintegrated into pieces. Meina gasped and insisted Minato was a monster. This was probably overkill. The task was finished, and all that was left to do was gather the booty before he returned to the guild. However, Aimi and Meina wanted to go with him since they wanted to become stronger, so he ultimately gave in to their pleadings, reasoning that there would be more to do going forward. Minato instantly smelled something, wondering if it was only now that his talent to sniff out treasure had been disclosed, but it turned out to be the smell of food because it was lunch break and Meina was cooking. Minato had previously only eaten boxed meals from the supermarket, so he was grateful to these two girls for letting him have such a tasty dinner. Although he could smell the aroma of wild meat, he could not deny that it was good because it had been cooked with his banana. They were currently examining this ruin. It resembled a maze, but Arami's excellent sense of smell allowed them to move forward without getting lost. In order to facilitate Aimi's navigation, Minato dispatched all the magical creatures that were in the way. Meina, meanwhile, marked them so they would know how to return and used her vision to support Minato in combat, making it seem as though they were an actual team. Aimi's detection was made much easier by Minato, who also swiftly dispatched the demonic beasts, speeding up the process of discovery. Minato also had the best strategy for defeating adversaries because of Meina's magic eye, which could identify their weaknesses and other attributes. Meina was strange at times, thinking it was all because Minato had 6 qualities and he was pretty awesome in her eyes. Yet it was true that Meina had assisted a lot when fighting demons, and this achievement also made Minato very happy. The depth of their exploration today would be determined by Aimi's instincts. She ate the hot pot and continued walking towards it, where there appeared to be a strong gathering at the top. Aimi had no idea how powerful they were, but the intriguing smell made her nervous. She wondered whether the adversary was highly powerful and had a great treasure. Minato's magical power had barely been reduced, so a golem was no trouble. The adventurer's task was to locate the game's best loot and, if in danger, to flee as soon as possible. They kept hunting for treasure. Aimi asked Minato to store her stuff because her magic storage was full, including magic equipment and communication gadgets in addition to magic minerals and jewels. It had the appearance of a relic from Minato's former life and was a highly developed remote communication tool utilized in ancient times. As such, it was expensive and rare. It resembled the computer Minato had previously seen. This was the device that had taught him offensive magic to survive up to this point. The computer that transmitted maps and conducted searches also had voice prompts installed. It was far superior to this one, but Aimi insisted that it was junk. The computer didn't seem to be broken, yet it couldn't be opened. Had it run out of magical power? So, all that was required to recharge it was to use the intermediary magic transfer object. Meina pondered the recharging because she was unaware of how the object's magical power was infused. Given her expertise in exploring monuments, it seemed that there was a huge information gap. Meina couldn't ask everyone everything, so she had to figure it out for herself. Everyone hurried to get away when Aimi suddenly called for them to evacuate swiftly. However, the exit doors were slammed shut. Perhaps all of the relic doors were locked. Minato attempted to use magic to open the door but was unsuccessful. It was likely constructed of a steel-resistant alloy. If he kept attacking, he might be able to break it, but even though he finished smashing one door, there would be numerous other doors. As Meina thought, she fainted, perhaps having seen something unusual. Minato quickly defended. Unknowingly, on the defensive, he unintentionally caused the wall in front of him to be destroyed. A machine suddenly appeared. Minato understood it was the true adventurer's duty to carry a lot of precious things and flee if he was in too much danger, but he had no idea how to get rid of this creature because it was so huge. The machine had already noticed them and triggered its tail to cause Minato to fall. Fortunately, Minato had died from a car hit in his former life. Thus, he was able to immediately respond to the enhanced spell on his body just before taking the blow. The machine seemed to be primarily focused on Minato, so he would create breaches for them to escape and then utilize upgraded bullet fire. This dragon was fine. It was even more powerful than the golem earlier. Minato was unsure of what to do, and Meina and Aimi seemed to blame him because they had been taught to flee when in danger. They questioned him about whether he stayed because he still had some sense of adventurer honor in him. It appeared that advanced sensors could detect them even through the wall, and the wall that had been stained with magic was currently repairing itself, suggesting that the wall, ceiling, and floor here were unlikely to be destroyed. As a result, if they couldn't kill this dragon, they wouldn't be able to find their way out, fearing they'd be buried here. Aimi moved into action, holding a ball to strike with and carrying magic tools on her hips. Depending on the assignment, she could fly, although it was a little unsteady, and she also assisted in jamming the dragon. Aimi tried to make the dragon uncomfortable while the other two brainstormed a solution. She'd seen Minato's bullets before but still questioned him. He wasn't sure if his plan would work, but then he suddenly remembered something he had inadvertently created the previous evening when he was at his most creative. He reasoned that if he shot that thing in this enclosed ruin, they would all pass away. The other dragon also had firepower, which Aimi was able to avoid, otherwise. Meina was too terrified to react. Meina stated that she intended Minato to take it down the same way he brought down the golem, by triangulating the other dragon with fire and bullets, because the opponent possessed too much magic power and her magic power could not identify its weakness. The truth that Minato must still be at the top was obscured by Meina's use of faith. Minato shot all of his magic power at once, firing all at once simply to find its weak place. He did not anticipate it would be so easily exposed to the weak point, which was the circuits that transported the magic power beneath the layer out there. Electrically activated attacks were always effective against this type of magical beast. Everything before was only to create a gap in the layer, and it was put up to withstand the magic cradle, but it was all in vain. He couldn't just use conventional upgraded magic after penetrating that shell. Of course, despite the danger to the lives of the entire gang, he would survive. The monster prioritized assaulting Aimi since that enticing magic tool was more powerful than it imagined. In times of danger, Meina was able to save Aimi. This was defensive magic in this world. Suicide bombing was the last option, the most fundamental thing they could do when they were in trouble: seek help from someone else. Minato smiled like an office worker and wanted to establish a plan with Meina. This plan required two individuals to collaborate, so there was no time to waste. As Minato signaled, Aimi quickly agitated the monster while Meina maintained control of the shield to protect them from any stray bullets. Preliminary preparations had been done, and the sculptures that had not been injured by this formula friction had created barriers in case of a bounce. There were still many uncertainties, but it was worth betting on this time. At this point, Aimi quickly soared down the protective circle. The odd magic Minato had created on his own took a little time to merge the energy flow from the intricately formed rings, but it should have been done on purpose. The full force of this strike required a great deal of magic power, but he had already agreed to pay a high price for it. Unnamed magic. The walls were collapsing straight over their heads, but luckily they had a barrier to shield them. They succeeded, they won, and they were all awed by Minato's ability right now. Then Aimi caught a whiff of something interesting that looked amazing. Deus Ex Machina, this enormous thing. Aimi wanted to bring it back but didn't know how because it was too huge and heavy and there was nowhere to put it. The Deus Ex Machina was propelled by 13 magical arithmetic engines. After losing control, all except engine number 1 vanished without a trace. As a result, when the engines arrived in this world, they had no idea what was going on. They were in a difficult situation, but things have since gotten better. At that point, their physical and magical abilities had been exhausted. They grabbed the loot and returned to the guild after ensuring that it had stopped working. They were fortunate to be uninjured. They managed to gather 36 magical communication devices as a result of their hard work, costing them a total of 702 million zigs. However, the guild lacked the funds to purchase them because that sum was too large to cover them over a few thousand years for an entire nation. Everyone was disappointed, so they divided 36 devices among themselves and decided to sell magic crystals to the guild instead. They were the crystallization of lost magical energies, and if handled carelessly, they may explode. Hence, they were banned from owning, and anyone who found any crystallized samples had to sell them to the guild right away. Deep in the forest, there was a loud explosion, but because they were exhausted, they chose to fill out the paperwork to sell the plunder and retire for the night. Today had been enough, and they didn't want to continue to put their lives in danger. There was the sound of approaching footsteps, which were ready to rush in to discover knowledge seekers. It turned out to be Raya-san, the leader of Mania's branch, who had an emergency in need of their assistance. The commander personally came here, so it had to be something really severe, and they wondered if it had anything to do with the recent explosion. As soon as Raya-san learned that Minato was a rank E, he instructed him to remain, and if necessary, he would send someone to fetch Minato up, even though what he really needed was Mina's supernatural insight. Aimi warned Rayas not to underestimate Minato's skills, stating that he could burn a golem in the blink of an eye and even battle an exceptionally powerful dragon. However, Minato needed to rest and stayed at home. Nonetheless, Mina and Aimi would not assist if Minato did not accompany them. Minato was really exhausted because he hadn't slept yesterday night, but the people who were waiting for them were all very excited because they would have a fantastic chance to earn a lot of money. After all, only 10 or 20 wild boars would be too much for them to manage. According to a report from the reconnaissance team, there were at least 6,000 monsters there, and their attack power was at least sea level. People were afraid to run away since the city's protective wall would soon fall and the monsters were closing in. This was a battle for the survival of the strongest. It took many people to defeat a single monster, but with 6,000 sea-level creatures present, people couldn't defeat them. Everyone wanted to leave the city, but the commander spoke up and stated they needed to come up with a strategy to safeguard the city. The monsters were predicted to arrive at dawn, which was still around 6 hours away, and their magic grew stronger at night. It would be simple for experienced adventurers like them to leave quickly, but since most residents of the town were less experienced adventurers and civilians, it would be hard for them to flee. Although the explorer would be aware of how to defend himself and run away, Rayas, head of the Mania branch, pushed people to defend the city because there would undoubtedly be awards. After some deliberation, everyone agreed to stay to protect the city. They were attempting to devise a strategy, and the commander came up with the most practical plan right now, which was for the guild staff to evacuate those living near the wall and the explorers to collaborate with the builders. They began digging defensive trenches and building walls. The report also mentioned that there was an A-level monster among them, which caused many people to leave in fear. Minato only had roughly 20% mana remaining, but he also launched more than 100 upgraded fire bullets, having used all of his knowledge from his previous life to boost the spell's potency. He sat and watched the kids play hide and seek. Kinma saw the magic circle and had the idea that it kept monsters at bay. Kinma wasn't sure if this was true, but he thought it was worth a shot despite the fact that it used a lot of mana. Minato returned to assist everyone in evacuating and building. They were nearly finished while he rested, and they used storage magic to transfer rocks. The time had come for him to show off his skills, so he used excavation magic to surprise everyone by producing a large number of stones. They tasked Minato with collecting the stones while they focused on constructing the wall. Being trusted made Minato feel wonderful. It had been a while since he had felt it. Not good at all. It was almost morning, and they were not even halfway finished. Monsters had discovered them, and if they kept on at this rate, they would invade. The valiant warriors who could strike from a distance soon secured the wall, buying time to construct the inner wall. But curiously, a flash of light appeared, and the demonic beasts suddenly stopped attacking. Nobody knew why they stopped. Monsters normally attack as soon as they encounter people. Everyone knew the monsters had come here to destroy the city. They had already moved. Even from the observation deck, everyone could see that the monsters had passed, but there was no waving a yellow flag to signal invasion. They questioned whether their connection had been lost, but when they believed the monsters had halted, the monsters began to evacuate the city that was entirely encircled. There had never been anything like this before. It turned out that Minato's magic for summoning monsters had already been effective, but as he saw everyone's reactions, he realized something was amiss and wondered where he had gone wrong. When Aimi and Meina unexpectedly ran over to give Minato a hug, Meina was impressed by his magic because it allowed both statues to be completed on time while still being vulnerable to attacks from the air. Flying monsters would be a major concern, and some gigantic cannibal monsters could easily breach the wall. They were grateful to have Minato here. Meina was interested in Minato's magic because she had never seen him describe it in writing and had no idea where he had learned it. Most of the fearsome creatures had been destroyed in the previous world, so ordinary people didn't have to worry about battling them, but if the monsters attacked, they wouldn't know how to defend themselves. That was why the government had taken steps to distribute basic information about emergency response in the form of a game, which he had read a long time ago. This was an ancient sort of magic that was difficult to locate. It required a lot of energy, so he wasn't sure how long he could hold out. He could hold out for around 2 days if he didn't use any other magic, so they shouldn't allow Minato to use any other magic to safeguard the town now. Then Aimi thought it would be a good idea to gather the magicians to alternately guard the barrier. Minato had no idea what the spell's attribute was, but he was still able to use it. They assembled magicians who possessed the properties of fire, light, water, wind, and geological magic. All of these individuals had a high level of talent. The spell that warded off monsters was most likely ancient magic. The wizards inspected Minato's magic circle together, but oddly, it showed no response to any of the prefectures at all. Perhaps it was a multi-attribute mantra. The commander began to notice Minato's strangeness. Wasn't he just an E-class magician? How could he use such an advanced spell? Multi-attribute magic means that multiple combinations of multiple attributes are needed at the same time to activate the spell. But almost no one in this city has multiple attributes and is good at using multi-attribute magic. Only Minato, the commander, has no other choice but you. Normally, when monsters feel tired or hungry, he will go somewhere else, but their actions are very strange, so he doesn't know how long he needs to try to maintain it. The monsters are too quiet. It seems that there is a hero who could be a red disaster egg, an egg that suddenly appears in the forest and gives birth to monsters. If they destroyed that egg, the monsters would probably leave, so they needed to destroy the egg. But the egg was protected by monsters until now. Of the 10 eggs discovered, only 1 was successfully destroyed and 24 high-ranking adventurers were sent, but only 2 survived. Minato only had 20% mana left. The moment he ran out of energy, the monsters would rush into the city and destroy everything, so his energy was a big responsibility. Minato wanted to know more about the monsters. They are born from the red disaster egg, and can only move within a certain range from the egg. Minato came up with a bad idea. Everyone started moving and Minato would go to the VIP room and rest because the fate of this city was in his hands. He had to try to maintain the barrier for 2 more days. He had been up for 2 nights in a row, but if he fell asleep, the barrier might crack. This means you won't be able to sleep until this war is over. Basically, their idea is to abandon the city. Specifically, they will dig underground to make a tunnel and escape from the influence of the disastrous red egg. The monsters were crawling on the ground. They were eager to get out of here as quickly as possible. The physically strong adventurers used the popular excavation magic in their previous lives to build the wall, and they are doing the same to dig tunnels. Any rocks that hinder the digging process, they will put the dirt in a sack or store it with storage magic. All the resident adventurers are lining up and moving them out of the tunnel. Minato was focusing on reducing unnecessary energy consumption to maintain the barrier to repel monsters. He was really tired and just wanted to sleep immediately, but the receptionist wouldn't let him sleep. He had stayed up 3 nights in a row before, but he had never experienced such a high energy drain. If he wasn't careful, he could easily fall asleep. And if you do that, the monsters will destroy this city, which is a big responsibility you need to work hard at. The receptionist always tried to keep him from falling asleep in every way. If he fell asleep, she would really hit him even though she didn't want to. It's been a day and a half since I started digging the tunnel, but it's still not completed. Is there something wrong? The receptionist invited Minato to go check around because then he wouldn't sleep anymore. She really didn't want to hit him again. The people waiting for the evacuation signal were all sitting in front of the tunnel. He currently had less than 10% energy left. A geology mage insisted on returning to the tunnel even though he had run out of energy and needed to rest. Because the tunnel is almost completed, there is a hard layer between the ground and the tunnel that is blocking the exit of that tunnel, which is why the opening of the tunnel door is delayed. He's completely fine, but the canal has been destroyed by monsters, so there's no more drinking water. As for the water mage's power, it could only fill 2 barrels, it had already been consumed. Perhaps the reason why the magician's power was so weak was because the magic circle of the water supply spell was ineffective. Minato fixed it and the village no longer had to worry about drinking water. Since the water problem had been resolved, they next needed to deal with the rock that was blocking the exit. If excavation magic couldn't break it, then would it be possible for mages to use Minato's improved attack magic? Even though he only had 10% of his energy left, he still had enough strength to hold back the monsters for a while. I'm going to go suggest this to Rayas. It's so bad the water is spraying from above the tunnel. It's underground water, it's running quite strongly. If they don't do anything, in 1 hour the entire airway will be submerged and the tunnel will still not be open. Not only will the water submerge the tunnel, but it will also soften the walls and ceiling, causing the wall to collapse in a chain reaction that destroys the entire tunnel. So it was hard under the tunnel and didn't even have any cracks. A new plan was formulated after the tunnel was completed and the residents escaped, through which Minato would seal the connection and resolve the barrier. But the tunnel is currently not open and there is a risk of flooding. Asking people to go through it is like asking them to drown. But if you stay here for less than half a day, the barrier will collapse and the monsters will kill everyone. Indeed, from the beginning, there was no safe path in this situation. Minato decided to take everyone into the tunnel and he would open it. Everyone would be inside, then failure would mean death. His hands were shaking. He released the barrier that repelled the monsters. The monsters rushed into the city in a split second. Luckily everyone went down to the tunnel. Now he can freely use magic, it all depends on the hardness of the rock. With everyone's cheers, Minato used the last bit of his strength to destroy the tunnel. Minato came as a rescuer, he saved everyone in the city. Mages often play a support role and they are often overlooked by adventurers. Meina was fed up with such things, but she just remained silent and Aimi helped her a lot in such situations. Meina was too shy to say a sincere thank you. Aimi's high jump magic device and monster taunting device were broken. And Meina couldn't fix it. Aimi felt very sad but couldn't do anything. Minato had come to reinforce him. He saw he was really big. It seemed only explosive magic could open the way out. If he attacked too many times the tunnel could collapse. He had to avoid that at all costs price. So the only way is to use up all the remaining base energy in a precise strike. He asked everyone to step back a bit. Even though the water was already up to their stomachs, everyone still listened to him. He had to create explosive magic with greater precision and power. It hurt as much as he tried to close his eyes, but he tried to perfect the drawing so the magic flow would be more effective. Magic cannons have been improved. Thank God you made the exit appear. Everyone was very happy and at the same time he fainted, unable to see clearly what was outside the exit. He woke up with Meina and Aimi lying next to him. They were so worried about him that they fell asleep while taking care of him. He was confused and didn't know who this beautiful white-haired woman was. So she was the one at the exit. She was Kadif, the clan leader of the Mia's guild. Messages for help were sent to neighboring guilds and unexpectedly the guild master himself arrived. The guild master really respected him because she heard everything from the Mania guild master. Him saving an entire city from being besieged by monsters without any casualties was truly an extraordinary achievement. He was awarded 30 million zig, but it was not worth what he had done. If the guild reconsidered, the reward could be higher. The boss left and let him stay here as long as he wanted, and so did Meina and Aimi. Those two people must have been up for 2 nights already. Being careful not to wake them up, he quietly left and visited the city. But Meina woke up and grabbed his apple. It turned out they were just pretending to sleep. They want to show you around the city because they also come here often. Minato felt surprised. This city was so big because Mia's was the central city of this region. It was also the trading center. All trade routes passed through here. They were very excited to see that the wall of this city was very large. With this wall 6,000 monsters would take a lot of time to overcome. This city also has a recently completed observation tower to quickly monitor the surroundings because monsters are gathering nearby. Being a big city, there are many expert craftsmen here who work really fast. There are also huts in the town square because there are not enough rooms for travelers, and there are also refugees from Mania. They were even having a party. They looked very happy. Aimi also wants to join, but Meina doesn't want to be noticed. Something bothered Minato a bit. He thought that the big thing he saw in the ruins before was the red disaster egg. The first thing he thought of when the monsters exploded was that the magical artificial intelligence had gone out of control. Aimi and Meina only cared about the food in front of them and did not pay attention to his concerns. Meina brought out the map Rayas had given her and saw that the location where the guild found the explosion was quite close to the ruins they had discovered. The people of Meina cannot stay here forever. They will definitely return to their homeland, so it is necessary to find a way to defeat those 6,000 monsters or find and destroy that disaster egg. A group of powerful heroes including Minato have fully recovered. And the best adventurers of Mia's will probably be enough to destroy the disaster egg, but the losses will definitely be high. That's the last section of the book. Aimi thought that the egg there was probably underneath that big thing because when she explored the office she smelled a strange smell under the floor. But she only said it now because at that time the two of them had run out of energy and she was afraid that if they put something as big as a mechanical dragon on it, it would be very dangerous. Aimi has a very good nose, so maybe the egg really is underneath that device. If she were to be used properly now, she might become a disaster detector. Aimi shyly described that strange smell as being like the smell right here. Aimi suddenly felt very cold, like she was about to freeze and didn't know why. She hid under Meina's cloak, not because she was cold or because she had a cold, but because she felt like she was in a very dangerous place, and she didn't know what it was. But Meina didn't feel any suspicious strength. Maybe what Aimi saw was murderous intent. If you recall that Minato's teachings about tunneling and water creation magic were both unusual, perhaps someone was targeting him because of that. Aimi's qualities work very well in ruins but are less sensitive to humans. Even though Meina contacted the guild, nothing strange happened in the city. They will continue to check around the city, but Aimi still refuses to leave. It seems the danger is not over yet. First, go back to the guild restaurant. Even after taking a hot bath, Aimi still didn't feel better. She still wants to listen to a song or tell a funny story. She must still feel that there is danger approaching. Minato wasn't sure what it was either. Now he thought about magic. Had to go through some magic that could be used for scenarios he could foresee, but it didn't make sense at all. Is there a better way? Aimi seemed calm around Minato. She looked quite like a kitten. Minato thought about the reason why Aimi was so scared. Could it be the reason why the 6,000 monsters changed their direction of movement, and because it was probably approaching Mia's? Meina thought the monster affected by the disaster eggs couldn't make a long or complicated trip, but there could be exceptions. If that happened, the entire region would be destroyed. Mia's was the largest city in the region and the main trading center. If monsters surround the city, all trade and supply routes will be cut off and many other cities will be affected. Therefore, Mia's cannot be harmed. Those are just hypotheses that Minato made. He remembered that when Meina was attacked before, Aimi was fine, but with her current reaction, she was probably in a much more dangerous situation. There was an incoming call from the Mia's guild calling Meina. So everyone was summoned, every adventurer was here and 3 people were also summoned. On the observatory everyone saw that there was an explosion in the forest and monsters kept pouring out from there, but they had just spawned about 40,000 class 6.6 monsters compared to Mania. This is why Aimi is scared. He knows there will definitely be trouble, but the number is hard to imagine. If the whole city knew, they would be in chaos. Fortunately, there was Kadif's army of guards. They were soldiers under Kadif's direct command, and were willing to sacrifice themselves for her. Kadif appeared and confirmed that it was true, although the reason is still unclear. But at this rate, the monsters will surround the city within 24 hours. The only solution is to form teams and directly attack the location of the disaster egg to destroy and smash it. Overcoming the monsters and breaking the egg sounds like suicide, but it's still more reasonable than just defending the city. The commander standing out is Kadif. She wants to proactively attack instead of passively defending. Anyone who wants to join the advance will come back here at noon tomorrow. Kadif left, everyone dispersed. She's such a great leader that it's no wonder she has her own army that's really different from Mania. Meina feels that this kind of plan will pay off because if it's 6,000 monsters but fighting 40,000 monsters, then we will die before getting that egg. Minato wants to find the egg before Kadif, just the 3 of them. The sooner they knew about the egg's location, the less casualties there would be. And it would be troublesome if others saw his improved magic. And he admitted that for himself only Meina and Aimi wanted to go to dangerous places. He was admitting he was too cautious. Minato, Aimi and Meina are digging underground tunnels to find the egg. Reflecting on their efforts in Mania, Minato improved the spell so that no more time was wasted removing soil. Assuming the egg is right under this pile of rubble, they are 2/3 of the way there. They were also quickly handling the excavation. It seemed like even without Meina to show them the way, they could still do it using Aimi's scent detection ability. Meina had to return to the ground, so she gave Minato a gift. This was the first time she gave him a gift. He was looking forward to that gift, but it was a hoe. Meina realized that he didn't need this because his energy had recovered. But actually this is a big help. He needs to maintain his energy from now on. He's still happy to use it. Meina said goodbye to the two and returned to the ground. Minato wanted to defeat Kadif in the egg hunt at any cost, and didn't know when this turned into a match. Before, he was very scared. Things would get serious when they found the egg. They wouldn't be able to handle everything with the three of them. By digging deep into the basement they can avoid the 40,000 monsters above, but cannot avoid having to fight the monsters protecting the egg. That's why Meina returned to the surface to gather reinforcements so they could defeat them. Meina is very good at negotiating, so it's safe to say she'll bring a bunch of adventurers. It would be good if she brought at least 30 people. Aimi is also no longer afraid, so she can fight. Meina contacted the two using a magic communicator. She had just arrived at the mountain at the end of the tunnel. And seeing that there was no activity from the watchtower, it seemed like the speed of the monster's infiltration had not changed at all. She also didn't know why they moved so much slower than the ones in Mania. While talking, two magicians were standing nearby. Meina also felt their power. It was possible that they would become her reinforcements, but they were startled and turned away. Down in the tunnel, Mianto is in trouble. He encounters a hard rock and the excavation spell is not strong enough to handle it. He was afraid that using a cannon in this tight space would create a cave. Maybe this was the perfect time to use the pickaxe that Meina gave him. This was the first time he used a non-magical tool, but it seemed like the pickaxe wasn't a tool they could pick up easily the first time they used it. Minato attacked you from the side. Surprisingly, it slid away easily, revealing a cave. Minato lost his momentum and almost fell down into the cave, but fortunately Aimi grabbed the hem of his shirt and pulled him up. Minato wanted to go down to the cave to see what was going on, but Aimi felt there was toxic gas. You need to be serious about those things. Aimi also went into a cave while exploring the ruins, but Meina was the real expert and now she's not here. Aimi ran to find some canaries that could detect poison gas, and Meina, she ran too fast, leaving Minato alone. During that time he performed the poison detection spell, but still had to contact Meina after looking around. Meina warns him that if he continues without the right tools, it will be very dangerous. Another large explosion occurred, perhaps related to the red disaster egg. Minato collapsed. Meina was very worried about him. Luckily Aimi had just come out of the tunnel. She hugged Meina. Maybe the cave had already collapsed. They didn't have time to reverse it. Minato fainted in the tunnel. Suddenly there was a red flag leading from the watchtower, a signal that monsters had been discovered nearby. They should have moved slowly, but why did they suddenly come so close? Perhaps the explosion and the speed at which the monster was born were related. The departure will begin a little earlier. Meina and Aimi must stay behind to protect the city and cannot come like Minato. Minato himself used healing magic to quickly find the egg. This explosion was strong enough to blow a person away, which meant he was very close to the epicenter of the anomaly. He had no other choice but to continue trying to get up and move on. With no way to escape, he continued walking in the direction from the explosion. He heard that there were many monsters surrounding the disaster egg. He went to that area, which was a fan-shaped space with a radius of 100 meters, filled with suspicious fog. It seemed like the cooking monster was born from that red swelling and mist that was pouring out from a hole. Surely the egg was in there. Luckily he had prepared a few things. First he needed to overcome these monsters. He used control magic to control 100 knives to kill monsters in the first mission to attack the monsters. He cried the magic circle of the control spell onto the knives to control their operations from afar to a certain extent. He would use them like that because without knowing how much energy would be needed, jumping into battle now was not a good idea. Thanks to the floating spell engraved on the knives, they became footrests even though they weren't very sturdy. He had to walk slowly so as not to attract the attention of the monsters. But they were coming. He used knives to fight off the monsters. He ran quickly on the floating knives to get into the hole. Luckily the monsters couldn't get in there. On the inside, the viewing hole is not very big, with a maximum distance of 20 meters from one end to the other. Based on the material of the walls, it is clear that it is part of an ancient ruin. He saw something blue shining deep in the room. Minato didn't understand why the red disaster egg was blue. But he didn't care, he quickly destroyed it. When he shot magic at the egg, a cube suddenly appeared, which turned out to be a hindrance if he used attack spells. That cube could also talk. He wondered if he could talk to this cube or not. He introduced himself. The cube thought he was an S-level transcendence target. He was wondering what transcendence was. Suddenly it transformed. It seemed like this machine was protecting the egg. A guard dog or a cow. Either way, it seemed like it wouldn't listen to what he had to say. He used a lot of magic like tornadoes, improved fire bullets, wind cannons, and thunder cannons, but none of the elements had any effect. Maybe magic doesn't work on it. Maybe the unnamed spell would work on this machine, but he didn't have enough time to activate it. Since it has removed the limit, maybe if you hold out long enough the machine will overheat or something and destroy itself. If magic doesn't work, then physical impact means you pick up the pickaxe and attack, but it doesn't help at all. It attacks the targeted country instead of attacking you. There's something where the pickaxe falls. Some heavy magic crystal, which is a variation of a magic crystal controlled by the guild as an explosive. When there is any impact, these crystals release a huge amount of energy. Ordinary magic crystals couldn't compare to those in his previous world as they were only used by the military. This was the important part, so the machine protected these things away from the kingdom, which meant an explosion from a heavy magic crystal would have an effect on it. He knew the path to victory. When he was about to attack the crystal beam, the machine rushed out to protect him. There is a proverb from the previous world that says, "If you run after two bunnies, you won't catch either one." This time the machine tried to protect both the egg and the boss crystal at the same time, but it lost. He destroyed the egg, all the magical beasts disappeared. Meina and Aimi knew that it was thanks to Minato that they were really happy and hugged each other. Minato returned to the ground. He saw a person dressed as a guild member walking with Catif soldiers. They approached to handcuff him. They led him to a mysterious door that led him into a room that, unlike what he expected, had a lavish welcoming party. Mina is locked in a cellar below Mia's. He tries to break the handcuffs but to no avail. He was detained here, but they did not mistreat him. The way they treated him was strange. He thought that following their orders would cause less trouble than resisting and chasing, but perhaps that was a rather hasty conclusion. He had a feeling he had seen the guild staff who had handcuffed him before. His face was so blurred that it was hard to remember, but Minato had definitely seen him somewhere before. Minato remembered that he was the person behind Catif at the guest house, which meant that the person who ordered his arrest was Catif. At the same time, she walked in and Minato didn't understand why she was detaining him. Because you're under suspicion of deliberately digging a tunnel into Mia's to let the monsters in. No matter how he explained it, Catif couldn't believe that a magician could rush into battle with the monsters guarding around the egg alone. Mianto took out a round pearl he had taken from the room to show Catif. Upon inspection, it was a genuine disaster crystal. These gems appeared when a red disaster egg was destroyed, but it was blue. Even though he couldn't explain it, was it because the disaster red egg itself was blue? Disaster crystals are magical catalysts of very high quality. Catif wants to keep the analyzed gem. Of course Minato will let them analyze it. And now Catif is sure you are not their ally. They will never produce disaster crystals so easily. Catif cut off his handcuffs and apologized for putting him through something quite unpleasant, while also reminding him to protect himself because he might be kidnapped by those hiding in the city. In the end, it was revealed that he was the one who destroyed the egg, but the man named Leader did not accept it. He asked Minato about Makina's hand model, which is the name of a criminal organization that the guild considers to be the most dangerous today. Maybe they are hiding in this city. It turns out that since Minato came to Mia's, he always felt an annoying gaze watching him, but in fact it was Leader. He had been suspicious of Minato from the beginning. It was true that Minato was a bit shady, but he was really upset that he was mistaken for a criminal and didn't know why Leader was suspicious of him. It turns out Leader saw the water supply magic circle he created. Almost no one can read the circles used by Makina's invisible hand, that's why they suspected him. By using this magic circle, the invisible hand submerged an entire town in a sea of water and 2,000 people died. It was an unforgivable and unimaginable crime when they used common magical techniques. Maybe they were responsible for the monster attack outbreaks in Mia's and Mania. Leader wants Minato to cooperate when he knows any information related to Makina's invisible hand model. He will be paid handsomely. Leader gives a stone. The guild member will always carry such a stone. Minato also wanted to know about the invisible hand, so when he knew any information he would report it immediately. He used magic to break the handcuffs. Leader was surprised, and that was what made him suspect Minato. Leader led Minato out to a strange passageway connected to the guild. It's so lively here, it seems like everyone gathered here to find out how the monster outbreak was resolved. He couldn't see Leader anymore. Perhaps he was intentionally creating the impression of being at home to avoid the enemy's attention. Minato also tried not to stand out too much to avoid attracting attention. At the same time, Meina and Aimi were anxiously looking for him in the crowd. The two of them shouted his name loudly. If you called them right now, they would write your name loudly throughout the hall and you would be noticed. While not knowing how to let them see him, Leader recognized him and called Meina and Aimi to him. The two were overjoyed and speechless when they saw Minato. Meina leaned into his ear and said something, then the two left. Minato had enjoyed exploring the ruins before, but if he went with those two, he might accidentally mention that they didn't want to bring in girls. Minato left and would return in 3 days so that the guild's reception desk would provide him with something useful in the future. 3 days later he came back. He felt excited because he had put in so much effort to destroy the disaster egg that he might be rewarded with money. You have been promoted to D rank. You are the fastest promoted person in history, but it seems you are not very happy to receive a D rank card. This rank increase will be much more useful than the money you asked for. It's a mistake to think it's money. The receptionist brought out a large and heavy box, which was given to him as a reward from superiors. This box has a seal on it that only its owner can open. He touched and sealed it and it was lost. The box opened because he was its owner. Inside was a lot of gold coins. He used storage magic to get that money. At the bottom of the box was a letter with 100 million zig written on it as his temporary statue. It was very likely that he would get more later, and they returned the disaster crystal to him. If the Machinas find out you have the disaster crystal, they'll know you're the one who ruined everything. It's really dangerous. The crystal gem is carefully hidden at the bottom of the box. To avoid being in danger, he will sell the crystal to this Zessel guild as soon as possible. He went to Zessel's store thinking that they secretly bought and sold dangerous crystals. Zessel must be a famous store that caters to people with special passions. But that store was tiny with only one counter. It only had about 30% of the collection of stores near the guild. Honestly, this place looked like it was in danger of closing down at any moment. He wondered if this was Zessel. Suddenly an old man came out. He gave him a stone. There is no doubt that this place is right. This store is small for a reason. After the two got to know each other, Mr. Zessel led him down a secret tunnel, otherwise it would be revealed. So the store above is just a disguise while the basement is the real store. From purchasing to ordering, everything happens here. Minato saw a lot of valuable things. He thought he could sell the items the guild didn't buy to the store, such as the scissors monster and the magic communication device. So the useful thing Leader talked about was this secret society, but the main problem was that he wanted to sell the troublesome crystal from the disaster egg immediately. After Mr. Zessel examined the crystal, which cost up to 260 million zig, this was more transparent than any disaster crystal he had ever seen, although he did not know why it was blue. This is an extremely large crystal. The crystal formed after the egg was destroyed and its monsters disappeared. He destroyed the egg before it could summon more monsters, so the crystal must still have a large amount of magical power inside. Mr. Zessel wanted to attack him. Having such rare items meant that fate had arranged him for him. This is something that cannot be bought no matter how much money one is willing to pay. He wanted to make a ring that could activate and increase magic like a staff. With the ingredients from the Calamity Egg, the ring's power will surpass even the strongest swords in this kingdom. And there's no need to hold it like a staff, so you can keep your hands free while fighting. But he had never used a staff. He didn't know what would happen if he used such a high-class ring. Magic in this world is very complicated and ineffective. Using magic takes a long time, so having a staff will help use magic faster and more consistently. But his improved magic was completely different. He could use it without delay or too long casting time. He wondered whether he should sell the crystals or rework them, because now he still had many worries when using nameless magic with high firepower. Perhaps in the future he would be able to use this complex magic even more powerfully if he had the ring. Moreover, Machina's invisible hand also knows how to improve magic like you. They will probably use staffs like other magicians, so a ring that allows you to flexibly adjust your magic will give you an advantage when dealing with them, and you can't avoid them forever. Processing the ring took 5 million zig. The process is not complicated, but the tools to create it are very special. As for the process of using the disaster crystal in such a way that it is formed before the ring in the final product, there is no way of knowing the ring was made from a disaster egg. The amount of money was not small, but he had just received a big reward, so he decided to pay it forward. Mr. Zessel recognized him as a sage. He created a ring that fit him very well. He could still feel the disaster crystal inside the ring, it was truly assimilated. The ring will react when you begin to transfer energy to the spell. He went into the next room to experiment with attack magic. He had a feeling something was wrong. The ring broke and the crystal still returned to its original sticker without any damage. The best ring he could make using advanced technology could not stand. No ring was suitable for him. Mr. Zessel went to the cupboard and opened a dusty box and took out a ring he accidentally found at an auction because no one was paying attention to it. But his intuition told him that this ancient ring contained great power. Even though he had tested it many times, he still could not activate its power. So he put it on the shelf and forgot about it. Now that he remembers it, he will rework this ring for Minato. He entered the room and tried using magic again, this time matching the wand perfectly, and the first ring felt like they were holding back his magic. But this ring seemed to govern him, the flow of energy was smooth and clear in his body. He put magic into the ring. Unexpectedly, it destroyed the entire solid room. Mr. Zessel was very surprised. He fainted and suddenly remembered his real world before. He felt dizzy. For a moment he felt the ring absorbing a lot of magical power. The headache was probably a side effect of that, perhaps before the ring magnified the magical power. He used a spell weak enough to hit the shield, but the spell actually destroyed it. This ring would probably allow him to create unbelievable power with nameless magic. This was an artifact with great potential. Minato really likes this ring. It can play an important role in the upcoming battles. He needs to master it to avoid headaches every time he uses it. A pigeon suddenly flew up and landed on his hand.